Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Gretel and Hansel? I have to remember to swap those. Stick around and find out. Ba-da-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum, bum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-da-dum, ba-da-dum, ba-da. That's an old, like, Franz Schubert song I sung in college that has Hansel and Gretel in the lyrics somewhere. That's what I think of when I think of this movie. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Gretel and Hansel, or Hansel, as they say in the movie. There's no effort to kind of imply German accents or anything like that. It's so interesting choices there. Lots of interesting choices just stylistically in this. But anyway, let's get into it. The synopsis on IMDb reads, a long time ago in a distant fairy tale countryside, a young girl leads her little brother into a dark wood in desperate search of food and work, only to stumble upon a nexus of terrifying evil. Yeah, I mean, because they're going through like really hard life circumstances, they find this brother and sister, Gretel and Hansel, find themselves without a home and needing to find a place to work, a place where they can learn a trade and develop skills so that they can have a life for themselves of some kind. Gretel is like a young teenager, and Hansel, I should probably say, is much younger. He's probably closer to 8 or 9 years old, maybe. And so they're traveling together, and she's kind of having to mother him and help him get around and survive and stuff like that, And they come upon this little cottage in the woods with an old woman there who seems to be very helpful and welcoming to them, and then the story progresses from there. And if you're familiar with the classic fairy tale, you can guess at least some of what will happen, but actually the story is modified in a number of ways. It doesn't abandon that core and where that whole thing goes, eventually, but it adds a lot of interesting other elements and layers and stuff that I really appreciated. I would describe it, as far as like what the basic animal is, as a fantasy fairy tale horror movie in a pseudo-historical setting. It's shot with an aspect ratio and just a general filming style that reminds me of horror movies from like the late 70s, maybe early 80s, It's more about creepy imagery and these quiet, creepy moments. Don't interpret quiet as boring, though, because I was really always, on the edge. I don't want to say on the edge of my seat, but I was constantly engaged with the story. I never was bored. It never felt sleepy or tired or slow to me. There's just lots of eerie goings on and creepy imagery, more so than like jump scares. I think there's maybe one jump scare that I remember in the whole movie, but there's frequently odd elements that go unexplained, like the figures that appear distantly in the woods or the black fingers of the witch. These things are never quite explained, and they all contribute to a sense of unease about the unknown. So it's my type of unsettling horror movie. I like horror movies that are more creepy or unsettling, or if they're going to be jump scary, then I want some crazy weird monster that's interesting to figure out over the course of the movie. But if you're going to do other types, of supernatural type stuff, I tend to like creepy and eerie more than like jump scary and stuff. But it's not so unsettling that I wanted to like take a shower afterward, like a movie like Hereditary, where I'm like, ugh. I mean, that was definitely unsettling. I never want to see it again. I don't know a single person I would recommend it to. It just felt icky, and I'm glad it's over, So it's not like that kind of experience for me. It was unsettling to the right degree and in the right ways to really just work for me. And it also doesn't get like arguably pervy, or objectifying or add naked people for the sake of being weird, as I think some horror movies with similar tones and shooting styles to this one have done in recent years, and it just feels like kind of cheap to me to go that route. I was also, wondering all the time where the story would go next, what weird thing would happen next, because they really add a lot to that core skeleton of the classic fairy tale that is interesting and unexpected. This is not a movie about running from a monster, even though it's like a supernatural movie, and there's definitely like one being that's like the antagonist. It's not about like running from them and surviving jump scares and being chased down hallways. It's just not that. It's rather about being slowly overtaken by evil in at least two different forms, because there's a different form of kind of evil that is tempting and overtaking Hansel compared to the evil that's tempting and overtaking Gretel, but that's basically kind of the vibe of what this thing is. And it also provides a great springboard, I think, for thinking and talking about evil in our own lives and how we can subject ourselves to it and be slowly overtaken by it. It's also a bit of a coming of age story, I think, wrapped up in a horror movie package, but more on the themes in a minute. The dialogue is unusual in that it feels archaic and formal to me at times, but with some subtle modern sensibilities as well that in a different movie, I think it would have hurt the experience for me, but the general eerie atmosphere made the dialogue just kind of one more slightly odd element among the numerous other slightly odd elements, and so I think it ultimately contributed to the overall tone positively. So let's talk about the cast a little bit. Sophia Lillis, maybe not a name you recognize. She plays Gretel, and you might have remember her from the It movies, Chapter 1 and Chapter 2, and then I guess she's also in a Nancy Drew movie that's coming out. I just saw a little thing on her IMDb page. Not much emotional range is asked of her in this movie, and the same with the actor playing her little brother. It's mostly caution and fear, which they both presented well, and of course, brief moments of like terror or struggling or whatever, were done well as well. We're done well as well. I don't know. Anyway, it's uncut. We're moving forward. Alice Krieg, if that's how you pronounce her name, was really the standout for me. Probably, which would be obvious to you. She plays the witch, and she's possibly most well known among geeks for playing the Borg Queen in Star Trek: First Contact, and she reprised that role one or two other times in Star Trek various shows or whatever. But she's also done a ton of other somewhat creepy roles over the years. I hope that she doesn't feel typecast all the time. But I thought she was perfect casting for this, and just gave a great performance. I thought that was both invitingly warm and then also creepy in just the right amounts and in just the right times in the story. So I really, I don't want to say enjoyed. I was really engaged with her performance all the time. So let's talk about the stunts and visuals. It's not really a stunty type of movie. There's plenty visually of interest in this. Visually, the visuals really created the sense of dread and tone and unease in the tone that made the experience so much of what it was for me. Largely practical effects. Plenty of weird and eerie visuals, but the lack of reliance on CG, except for some brief, instances, was very appreciated by me. The creepiness here is largely about props, about sets, it's about costumes, about makeup, and how they are displayed and edited in this distinct shooting and editing style that the movie has. Initially, I thought that them leaning on that kind of older, it might even be a German, speaking of German names, Hansel and Gretel, it might even be a German style of filmmaking or originated in Germany, I'm not sure, but this older kind of 1970s style use of lenses and shot composition and stuff like that. I thought, I was like, this feels a little bit like, okay, they're doing this. There's a number of movies that have been kind of leaning on some of those retro film aesthetics in recent years. So I thought it was going to be a turn-off and a point of disconnect for me, but I really found myself engaged with what they were doing, and it helped the tone, it helped the story for me. So visually, I really appreciated what this movie brought. Okay, so themes. Is there anything moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in the themes of this thing that might stimulate some worthwhile thought or conversation? And for me, definitely, Gretel is a young teenager, and the movie seems in part to be a coming-of-age story for her. Will she become her own woman, or is she going to just be play mother essentially to her younger brother? What kind of woman will she become? These are the choices that she has. A huntsman that they encounter early on clearly makes a distinction between good and evil paths that people can take in life and the results of taking those paths. And the movie seems to be about Gretel making her choice about what path she's going to take, what kind of woman she's going to become. The story also carries over the classic theme of evil's enticement that was central to the original fairy tale. The enticement, as I said earlier, presents itself differently for Gretel than it does for Hansel, but it's a major theme. Hollywood often represents the reality of evil best when it's making horror movies. While romantic comedies will usually say follow your heart and do what feels right, horror movies are much more likely to say don't just give in to your desires or you're going to get yourself in a ton of trouble. And more than any Hollywood movie I've seen in a while, in recent memory, Gretel and Hansel seems to say, don't just trust yourself to do what is right, because evil can feel very right. And so I really appreciated them kind of exploring those kinds of themes and making those kinds of statements in this movie. Now, I have no idea what your time-traveling thoughts are. I have no idea what your preferences are. But if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, well, rent this one for sure, because you're going to want to watch it, and then you're going to want to watch the special features for it, or maybe buy it sometime when it's really cheap on Amazon or something like that, like $5, around that neighborhood. Because when the credits rolled, I really wanted to ask the writer and director some questions about their worldview, about what they thought of evil, what they thought about, the human heart, and so I don't know if they'll make comment on those things at all in the special features, but I would want to dive into them to find out, because there really seems to be thought about those issues involved in the writing and directing of this movie. This is not one that I feel like I'm gonna, want to be hungry to see again, soon. But it's one I'll definitely recommend, and I do think at some point in my future it is going to be worth a second viewing, either to show to someone else because I think it's interesting and want to share those kinds of things with others, or just to enjoy it again myself. And hopefully, with the subtitle A Grim Fairy Tale, which this movie has, this is just going to be the beginning of more grim fairy tale adaptations in the same vein, maybe in a similar style. I would be really interested in seeing more grim fairy tales adapted with the same kind of philosophy and style. You can get my spoiler-filled reactions to Gretel and Hansel today in my Spoiler Car video series, and I definitely had things to say about the ending of this movie. Just one of many perks available for your support at patreon.com/SpiritBlade Productions. This one has an MPAA rating of PG-13 for disturbing images, thematic content, and brief drug material. I don't even remember the drug. Oh, yeah, okay, now I do. I guess you could say it's drug material. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, click that, that notification bell to stay connected, and anything you want to do to share this content with others you think would find it interesting or helpful, I would appreciate you doing that. I want to thank the Spirit Blade Insiders for making this review possible. Again, patreon.com/SpiritBlade Productions. That's it for now. You can join us, as I hope you do soon, over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.